Her bag was navy blue with a golden zipper that always stuck halfway. She tugged at it with a sharp flick of the wrist, the kind she used when she didn't know she was being watched. And she didn't know I was watching. Not from where I sat. Across the terminal, behind a copy of Architectural Digest I found in a half-empty newsstand. Gate B4. Chicago O'Hare. Mid-morning light filtered through the glass wall behind her, casting a slanted shadow over her shoes. She wore white heels. Bold. Confident. The kind you don't wear for a quick business trip. I watched her pull the zipper open and reach inside like it was any other day. She didn't flinch. Not at first. Just before the meeting. The big one. The career-changing presentation she'd been rehearsing for weeks. She unzipped that bag in the VIP lounge and saw it. My ring. And the note. She stopped moving for a moment, like someone had hit pause on her entire personality. Then she closed the bag slowly, like she wasn't sure if she'd imagined it. I didn't imagine anything. I put it there. Not this morning. The night before, while she was asleep. She'd had 2 glasses of red wine, taken off her makeup half-heartedly, and murmured something about a long day ahead. I had watched her drift off beside me, breathing soft and slow, completely unaware that I had already packed the quietest ending she'd never see coming. I slid the ring into the side pocket, the one she uses for her charger and boarding pass. Then the note, folded neatly, printed, not handwritten. I didn't want her to recognize my hand, just my intention. The note read, "Before your meeting, read this. Or don't. Either way, by the time you land, I won't be home." That was it. Nothing dramatic. Nothing loud. And now I was watching her from 20 yards away, surrounded by polished executives sipping espresso and checking emails. She sat perfectly still for nearly a full minute. Then something shifted. She stood up, grabbed her phone, turned sharply, dialed. I watched her lips move but couldn't hear her voice. She wasn't calling me. I already had my phone turned off. I wasn't supposed to be there. I wasn't supposed to know. And yet, I had followed her anyway. The worst part? I still didn't know who she was meeting. Only that it wasn't a client. And that it wasn't the first time. What happened after she found the ring and the note is something I couldn't have predicted. Because it wasn't just betrayal. It was something deeper, stranger, more personal than I ever imagined. And yes, it started with a zipper. She didn't look around. That's what caught me first. Most people, after finding a ring and a note like that in their travel bag, would scan the room, search the crowd, feel the unmistakable weight of being watched. But not her. Alina simply stood, smoothed her blazer, and made a call like nothing inside her had shifted at all. That's when I knew. This wasn't the first time she'd practiced looking unaffected. I set the magazine down on the seat next to me and lowered my head slightly, pretending to tie my shoe while I watched her reflection in the glass behind her. She wasn't calling her manager, that much was clear. The way her shoulders dropped forward, the way she leaned in toward the far window, this wasn't business. This was private, intimate, familiar. I kept my distance, heart thudding like I'd swallowed a ticking clock. I wasn't sure what I was hoping to find in that moment. Maybe guilt in her eyes. Maybe panic. Maybe something to prove that our marriage still meant anything. But there was no guilt. There wasn't even hesitation. Then he walked in. Tall, maybe late 40s, in a long black wool coat despite the mild spring air. Not handsome, not by any standard definition, just calculated. That was the word that came to mind. He didn't smile when he saw her. He didn't speak right away. Just slid into the seat across from her like this had been scheduled between flights. She touched his wrist. Her left hand. No ring on it anymore. That detail hit me like a quiet slap. She had taken it off before coming here. Long before, maybe. I wondered how long she'd been removing pieces of our life like that. One little item at a time. A ring here. A photo there. A dinner skipped. A kiss shortened. He handed her something under the table. I couldn't see what. Her fingers closed around it quickly, then she tucked it away in her bag. The same bag that had my ring and note buried in it. Untouched since she zipped it closed. I half expected her to bring it up. To say, "Look what my husband left me." To ask what it meant. But she never did. Whatever he gave her mattered more. I couldn't breathe properly. My lungs felt like they were working through sand. I stood up, moved closer, just far enough to see without drawing attention. That's when I noticed the envelope sticking out slightly from her handbag's front pocket. My envelope. The edge of the note peeking out like a whisper she hadn't read yet. She never even looked at it. That broke something in me. Not anger. Not rage. Just a slow collapsing. A quiet realization that she wasn't shocked because she wasn't surprised. I left the lounge before they did. I couldn't watch them walk away together. I didn't need to. I'd already seen everything I never wanted to see. Back at the hotel, I paced for nearly 2 hours. Then I did something I still can't believe. I called her. I didn't plan what to say. I just pressed the number and waited. She didn't answer. A few minutes later, she texted. Meeting ran late. I'll call you tomorrow. Everything okay? I stared at those words for a long time. They felt mechanical. Like an automated response sent from muscle memory, not care. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened her laptop. She'd left it behind by accident or maybe on purpose. The screen was locked, but I'd watched her type the password hundreds of times. I entered it, not expecting much. Just needing to see what the rest of her life looked like when I wasn't in the room. What I found next wasn't just emails or meeting notes. It was something that made the note I left in her bag feel like a breadcrumb at the beginning of a trail I was never meant to follow. And that trail was about to get darker. The moment her desktop flickered to life, I realized just how little I'd ever really known about the world Alina lived in when she wasn't at home. The screen was immaculate, no clutter, no random screenshots or forgotten icons, just 3 folders, sitting like quiet secrets, studio pitch, VIP tiers, and one oddly named Lux_Umbra. That last one wasn't work-related. I felt that in my gut before I even clicked. But I didn't open it yet. Instead, I searched her email. Not just the inbox, the archives, the sent folder, the trash. I wasn't proud of it, but pride had already left me hours ago when I saw her touch that man's wrist like it belonged to her more than I ever had. What I found in her email wasn't scandalous at first glance. There were no "I miss you already" messages. No photos. No hotel confirmations. But there were patterns. Dozens of confirmations to a single address, one I'd never seen before. Not her usual company hotel. Something smaller. More discreet. A boutique stay on Lower Wacker Drive, booked under the name A. Lynn. Her middle name. I clicked open a calendar invite she had deleted and recovered from her trash folder. The subject line read, Final Styling Room 1406 Lux Client Only. The name matched the folder on her desktop. And something about that phrasing, final styling, didn't sit right with me. I opened the folder. Inside, photos. Hundreds of them. Some professional, others taken with a phone in dim lighting. Not inappropriate, not explicit, but suggestive in a way that didn't need nudity to unsettle me. Each image was a version of her I hadn't seen in years. Hair differently styled. Makeup darker. Clothes I'd never seen in our closet. Jewelry that was not mine to give. There were invoices, too. Lux Coaching Suite, 12-week transformation plan. There were appointment logs, some labeled with single letters. Session with C, dinner with J, fittings, Mira. But the most disturbing file? A Word document titled, Alina, Identity Strategy. I opened it. The document was written in first person, but the sentences read like a role. Like she was rehearsing for something bigger than a job. I no longer apologize for wanting more. My husband never sees me, not the real me. But I've stopped waiting to be seen. Loyalty is comfort. And comfort is quiet death. Each line broke apart my ribcage a little more. I reread them, hoping I'd misunderstood, hoping they were maybe just therapy reflections, some exercise she never shared. But no therapist prompt ends with, present the new self. Let him find the old one folded away, irrelevant. I shut the laptop, hands trembling. Everything felt thinner, my skin, the air, the carpet beneath my feet. I stared at the hotel window but couldn't see the view. My vision blurred and swirled like I'd just stepped off a spinning platform. I started to wonder if maybe this had all been intentional. That maybe she wanted me to find this laptop. Or maybe she wanted me to feel like I had pieces of the puzzle without giving me the box. Keep me guessing. Keep me looking in the wrong direction. But why? Was it to force me into confronting it directly? Or was this part of a slow erasure, where I'd keep discovering how little I mattered, one digital breadcrumb at a time? I spent the night lying on the hotel bed fully dressed, the glow from her laptop still leaking across the sheets like a soft, artificial moon. At 4:23 a.m., I heard a ping from her inbox. An auto-sync from her phone, wherever she was. A message had come in. Subject line, you didn't say anything about the note. The body of the email was only 3 words. Did you watch? My blood went cold. She knew I was there. The email sat open like an accusation, its 3 words pulsing in my mind. Did you watch? It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't angry. It was worse. It was calm. Cold. like she already knew the answer and was only asking to confirm just how far I'd followed her down this spiral. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My fingers hovered over the keys. But what was I going to write? Yes, I watched you ignore a ring that meant everything to me while you held hands with a man who smells like money and power? Or maybe, I opened your laptop and found pieces of you I've never met. There was no language for what I felt. Not in English, not in any language I know. Instead, I grabbed my coat and left the hotel room. I had no plan. It was still dark, but the city was starting to breathe awake. Garbage trucks hissing, corner shops unlocking their gates. I walked 5 blocks without even noticing where my feet were taking me. Then I stopped outside a cafe with fogged windows and a chalkboard sign that read, "Be honest, even if your voice shakes." I took that as a challenge. I went in, sat near the back, and opened my phone. Not to email her back, but to open the security camera feed from our house. She didn't know I'd installed new ones. Not even a week ago. I told her it was because of the raccoons scratching at the garage again. But really, it was the long silences and the 11 p.m. errands, and the way she smiled at her phone like it was flirting with her. At 5:32 a.m., the camera feed showed something I never expected. A woman in a white coat walked up our porch steps. It wasn't Alina. She had a key, walked right in, moved confidently, like this wasn't her first time. I zoomed in. She was younger, maybe late 20s. Blonde. I recognized her. She was in one of the photos I'd found in the Lux_Umbra folder. Not alone, next to Alina, laughing in a rooftop bar. Her name was Mira. One of the fitting appointments, if the logs were to be believed. At the time, I assumed she was a stylist. Now I wasn't sure if stylist was just code for something else. She stayed in the house for over 30 minutes. Didn't touch anything obvious. Didn't take anything. Just wandered. Into the kitchen. Into the bedroom. At one point she sat on our bed and flipped open a book I'd been reading, The Buried Giant. She didn't read it. Just touched the pages like she was absorbing it through her hands. Then she walked to the hallway camera, stared directly into it for a few seconds, and mouthed something. I couldn't hear the words. I rewound it again. Slowed it down. Looked for patterns in her mouth. I know what I saw, even if I still don't understand it. She said, "You shouldn't have watched." Not, "You saw too much." Not, "This isn't what you think." No, she knew what I'd done, what I'd seen, and she was delivering a message on behalf of someone else. I left the cafe and headed straight back to the hotel. My heart beat like something was coming. Something just around the corner I hadn't figured out yet. It wasn't just cheating anymore. It was orchestrated, layered, like I had stumbled into a performance I didn't buy tickets for, but was now seated front row, center stage. When I got back to the room, Alina's laptop had shut itself off. I powered it on again. A second email had arrived. Same subject line, "Did you watch?" But this time, the message was longer. She wrote, "I thought maybe you'd follow me, that you'd be angry, or that you'd confront me. But I didn't expect you to be so quiet. That silence is dangerous, Milton. It tells me you're thinking. And if you're thinking, you'll go digging. And if you go digging, you'll find things you can't unknow. Please don't go to the apartment. Not yet. I'm trying to do this the kind way." The apartment? We only had one place. At least, I thought we did. She told me not to go to the apartment. Not don't go there alone. Not don't go there angry. Just don't go. Like the place itself had a pulse I wasn't supposed to feel. And that only made me want to go more. I didn't even know where it was yet, but her wording, the apartment, was deliberate. Not a place. The. So I did what I always do when something doesn't make sense. I opened a spreadsheet. I pulled up our shared Google account, filtered for location-based emails, rideshare receipts, delivery confirmations, anything that might point me somewhere she hadn't invited me. It was tedious, neurotic, maybe even pathetic, but eventually, one entry stuck out. An Uber trip to Glenmore Lofts 6 weeks ago. The destination wasn't saved in her history. It had been manually deleted, but the email confirmation still lingered in the archive, forwarded from her work email to her personal one with a note. "Confirm again for Friday. Key under planter." The lofts were on the north end of the city, in an old industrial building that had been turned into minimalist steel and glass nightmares for rich people who hate furniture. It was the kind of place you don't rent unless you want to feel like your entire life is a photo shoot. I took a taxi there. Not an Uber. Not tracked. Just an old yellow cab with cracked leather seats and a driver who didn't ask questions. It felt safer, even though everything about what I was doing felt unsafe. My palms were sweating as we pulled up to the curb. There was a planter by the door. It had no flowers, just dark soil and a flat, clean rock. I lifted it. The key was still there. For a second, I thought about leaving it, putting the rock back, pretending I'd never come. But then I remembered the woman in the white coat walking through my house like it belonged to her. The strange documents, the photos, the quiet way Alina had erased me from her ring finger and never looked back. I slid the key into the door. The elevator inside was silent. It smelled faintly of eucalyptus and something sharper, like cologne or antiseptic. The kind of place that's cleaned so frequently it feels sterile, not safe. I pressed 4. Her email said room 406. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped into a hallway that looked like a magazine layout. Polished concrete, frosted glass light fixtures. Every sound felt louder than it should. My shoes, my breath, my doubts. I knocked first. I don't know why. No answer. I unlocked the door and stepped in. The apartment was not what I expected. There were no signs of chaos. No clothes on the floor. No half-drunk wine glasses or evidence of another man. It was almost worse than that. It was curated, immaculate, as if it had been staged not for living, but for being seen. On the far wall, there were photos. Framed. Dozens. All of Alina. Some candid. Some professional. In various styles and outfits I'd never seen. One photo showed her sitting on the arm of a leather couch in the very room I was standing in. She was laughing, holding a glass of champagne, a man's jacket draped over her shoulders. But the man's face was out of frame. Another photo showed her barefoot, hair wet, looking out this very window. There was no evidence of anyone else living there. No razors or socks or keys. But she was there. Fully. Deeply. As if a version of her had been growing here the entire time. Like a second life being carefully groomed while the first one, the one with me, slowly shrank. Then I saw it. On the kitchen counter. My ring. Not the one I'd put in her bag. A different one. My original wedding ring. The one I lost 4 years ago kayaking in Cape Cod. The one she cried about for 3 days. The one we replaced together, with matching silver bands. I remember thinking how odd it was that we never found it. But here it was. Sitting in a small velvet box. Polished. Waiting. I stared at it for what felt like a full minute before I realized I wasn't alone anymore. Someone had stepped into the hallway behind me. I turned around slowly, and there he was. Not the man in the black coat from the lounge. Someone younger. Late 30s, maybe. Sharp suit. Tired eyes. He didn't look surprised to see me. He just said, "You weren't supposed to come here." And then everything started to unravel, faster than I could brace for. He stood in the doorway like someone returning to his own apartment. Not like an intruder or a guest. No knock. No hesitation. The man closed the door behind him softly, dropped his keys into the ceramic dish on the shelf like it was muscle memory, then looked at me. Calm, measured, unreadable. "I'm guessing you're Milton," he said, with the same tone you'd use to greet someone waiting for an oil change. Not curious. Not intimidated. Just factual. I nodded once, jaw clenched so tightly I felt the ache spike behind my ears. I didn't say a word. I didn't have any prepared. I had expected to find photos, belongings, clues, not him. Not flesh and blood confirmation of what I'd only suspected until now. "She told me you might come eventually," he added, walking past me like I was a lamp. "Didn't think you'd be early." "Who are you?" I managed. My voice came out drier than I expected. He smiled at that, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Depends on the year, I suppose. These days. I'm an arrangement." I stared. "An arrangement?" He nodded, removed his coat, hung it on the wall hook just inside the door. "She didn't tell you about the Lux program?" "The what?" "The consultancy. Behavioral design, strategic identity, remodeling. It's not as clinical as it sounds. Honestly, it's more spiritual than scientific. Alina enrolled about 14 months ago. Full tier 4 immersion. That includes property access, coaching, visual archiving, aesthetic reframing. They tailor your lifestyle to your unexpressed self." He walked toward the kitchen, pulled a glass from the cabinet. "Water." I shook my head, blinking hard. "You're telling me this is a program? Like self-help?" "Not self-help," he corrected, pouring. "Self-replacement." I stepped closer, eyes sweeping the space again. "You're her coach." He smiled, this time a little sharper. "Coach, partner, proxy, companion." I'm what she needed to become who she is now. Every sentence he spoke unspooled something deeper, something more invasive than cheating. This wasn't just an affair, it was a whole restructured identity. Like she'd slowly peeled herself out of our marriage, one habit at a time, and poured herself into this new architecture of a woman I didn't even recognize. You live here? I asked. Sometimes. Depends on what phase she's in. Sometimes she doesn't want anyone here. Sometimes she wants to restage the entire space between visits. He glanced toward the photo wall. Most of these images were selected by her. Others are projections, versions she hasn't yet embodied, but intends to. I felt dizzy. She's married, I said flatly, voice thick. To me. He didn't even flinch. No one said she wasn't. Lux doesn't require divorce. Only distance. That line hit harder than any slap ever could. I turned toward the door, but paused. She said she wanted to do this, the kind way. What does that mean? He walked over to the desk and picked up a sealed envelope. Handed it to me like it was a wedding invitation. My name was written on the front in her handwriting, soft cursive I hadn't seen in months. Inside was a single page, typed, the same font she used for grocery lists and birthday cards. Milton. If you're reading this, I know you've found the apartment. I know you've seen the walls, the photos, the silence I kept. I didn't keep these things from you out of cruelty. I kept them because I knew you wouldn't try to stop me. And that's what hurt most. You stopped noticing me long before I started changing. You stopped asking why I looked tired, why I stayed out late. You never once asked if I felt seen. So I enrolled. And I evolved. I'm not ending our marriage. Not yet. But I'm asking you to step away while I finish becoming who I was meant to be. If you can accept that version of me, when it's done, you'll know where to find me. If you can't, then we never really had what we thought we did. Please don't try to follow the next part. Hey. My hands trembled as I folded the letter back up. Where is she now? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The man picked up his phone, glanced at the time. She just landed in Milan. I looked up sharply. What? Phase 5, he said. The retreat. Full immersion. No contact. No technology. She won't be reachable for 2 weeks. I stared at him. At the apartment. At everything I didn't recognize that was somehow built with pieces of my life. And for the first time in a long time, I realized I had no idea what she'd become. He offered me espresso. Like we were two business associates casually discussing some quarterly shift in a company I never signed up to work for. I declined with a nod, barely able to keep my balance as I backed away from the white desk where I had read her letter. Not a goodbye, not an apology, but a manifesto. A claim to a new life in which I was either optional or obsolete. I don't remember leaving. Not the elevator ride, not the sound of the city outside. Just the clicking of that man's shoes on the concrete floor behind me, returning to whatever ritual she had left in place before vanishing. Outside, I walked in the wrong direction for nearly half an hour. My body moved, but my mind couldn't anchor itself. She was in Milan. Milan. As in Italy. As in another continent. While I was here, still reeling from a letter typed weeks ago, dated and sealed before I even knew she had a second apartment. What had I become to her? A relic? A memory with login credentials? Something to be paused while she went on a soul safari? Back at the hotel, the staff had cleaned my room. My bag was right where I left it. I hadn't packed a thing. I sat on the edge of the bed for a full 15 minutes staring at my suitcase, unsure if I should fold anything or just burn it all. I wasn't crying. I wasn't angry. That's what scared me most. I felt like a ghost haunting my own trip. Eventually, I opened my laptop. Her email was still open. I clicked through one final folder I hadn't dared to open earlier, core_tier_docs. It was a series of PDFs, contracts mostly formatted in clinical precision, pages of agreements between Alina and the Lux consultancy, non-disclosures, personal reinvention waivers, and something called an emotional transition clause. It outlined what they referred to as the spouse dissociation timeline. There, in black and white, partner acknowledgement must occur in either of the following phases: Phase 3, passive and formal drift, or Phase 4, active boundary assertion. In absence of acknowledgement, a strategic silence protocol may be enacted. Strategic silence protocol. I read the words over and over again until they stopped looking like English. They might as well have been carved into stone somewhere in a cave. This wasn't just emotional distance. This was a blueprint for it. I scrolled further and found a psychological summary written by one of their so-called identity engineers. The language was unnervingly specific. Subject displays strong duality attachment to traditional identity constructs. High empathy. Medium resilience. Conflict avoidant. Subject's passivity poses a risk of emotional absorption. Recommend phased detachment strategy with emphasis on re-individuation through narrative withdrawal and object repositioning. Narrative withdrawal. They were describing me like I was a variable. Like I was an obstacle to be managed instead of a person who once held her during a thunderstorm and whispered her awake when she had night terrors. My phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. It read, "You found the documents. Do not contact Milan. Please respect the timeline." No signature. No emoji. Not even punctuation beyond the first period. I locked the phone and stared at the wall like maybe if I looked long enough, the drywall would open and tell me what I was supposed to do. I couldn't sleep that night. I sat up in the hotel chair, laptop closed, phone powered down, afraid to open anything else. I just stared out the window and watched the lights flicker in and out in the city across the river. Somewhere in that skyline, a woman I thought I knew had already shed her skin and mailed me the leftover tissue. I realized I had 2 weeks. 2 weeks to decide if I waited for someone who clearly didn't want to be found, or if I finally became someone worth finding myself. But first, I had one more question to answer. Who paid for all of this? The apartment, the program, the photo shoots, the flight to Milan. Because it sure as hell wasn't coming out of her corporate salary. And when I logged into our shared accounts again the next morning, I found something far worse than betrayal. I found an investment. I should have known the moment I opened our joint portfolio. There had always been inconsistencies in our finances, tiny gaps I attributed to bad algorithms or end-of-month miscounts. I was the one who set up our accounts, created the spreadsheets, tracked the bills. I thought I had control. But there it was, right under Alina Trust Subledger. 12 withdrawals over 14 months. All labeled wellness and growth. Every single one routed to a shell account that eventually led to something called Umbra Reclamation LLC. The same name buried in her Lux folder. The same brand listed on her Milan itinerary. The consultancy wasn't just orchestrating her transformation. They were selling it, and she'd used our life savings to pay for it. But here's the part one never expected to feel: relief. Not anger. Not bitterness. Not betrayal, though all of those came first in waves, hard and hot and wild. But underneath the storm, there was this stillness. This strange, almost unbearable quiet. I finally understood something that I hadn't allowed myself to see all year. I wasn't being abandoned. I had been left behind a long time ago. This wasn't a story of a woman slipping away from her husband in the middle of the night. This was a story about a man who'd let his life narrow into the shape of someone else's ambition, who mistook silence for peace and routines for love, who thought being supportive meant disappearing. I didn't vanish. She did. And now, standing in the wreckage of everything I thought was home, I saw something I'd never noticed before: an open road. I left the hotel later that day. I booked a tiny cottage on a lakeside north of where we first met. No phones. No timelines. No more passive watching. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. I started eating breakfast before noon. I started running, slow and clumsy, but mine. A few weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. But I knew the handwriting. Milton, I'm not the woman you married anymore. That's not a cruel thing. That's just the truth. I wish I'd told you sooner. I wish I'd invited you into the process. I thought it would hurt less if I protected you from the parts of me that no longer belong to us. But I see now it hurt more. If you're okay, if you're truly okay, then I'll let this be my final word. Thank you for loving me in the quiet. I hope one day someone loves you in the light. Hey, I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't need to. I was already building something else. The sun still rises. The coffee still brews. My name is still Milton. And now, for the first time in a long time, I say it with pride. This wasn't a story about losing a wife. This was a story about finding a self. And I'm just getting started.